Alright, hello there. Welcome back to One Piece chapter review. Today we've got chapter 1104 titled Thank You Daddy. So obviously that's going to be a little bit more about Kuma, since where we left off he had appeared on Egghead and levied a big attack against Saturn. We've got a cover request here by Toshikazu. Sanji serves dessert to a mouse couple that just got engaged. We've got the groom mouse on his knee offering the ring. And Sanji is in the background with a big cake with candles on it. And he's smiling. It's very nice. The connection between Sanji and mice continues. Notes from Mode of Monsters is being animated. It's a one-shot that I wrote back when I was young. I can't believe this is actually happening. Life is good. Yeah, the Monsters trailer looks pretty interesting. Okay, first page. A punch full of feelings. We've got Kuma. Continuation of Kuma sending that big punch. And Saturn is flashing back. You're the Buccaneer brat. You can either live as a slave or die. Nothing else can be tolerated from someone of your ilk. Okay, it's not Saturn flashing back. Looks like it's Kuma. Because now we have Kuma sitting next to his father. Mommy has passed away. She's in a better place now. And that close-up of Kuma's father crying as he's telling Kuma. Now I've got Guinea. I'm just so happy, crying. Now I've got Kumachi. I'm sorry, but I'm at death's door. Now we've got Kuma in the church holding the baby Bonnie. And now Bonnie crying. In the present. Wow! Vegapunk, what is the meaning of this? How can Kuma still be alive? I made use of our contingency plan. A few days after the Revolutionary Army took him, I triggered his self-destruct mechanism. What? Okay. So that was Saturn speaking. He activated Kuma's self-destruct mechanism after the Revolutionary Army took him. So did Kuma overpower that? Because the reaction from Vegapunk indicates that he is completely surprised. And I don't think... I don't think the revolutionaries mentioned having disabled any self-destruct mechanism inside of Kuma. Okay. Triggered the self-destruct mechanism. And next panel, we've got Kuma reading that punch. It's a really nice shot. Smash! And he connects. Very big hit. Saturn bleeding from his face. And falling back. Crash. Saint Saturn. Yep, he knocked him on his back with that hit. And Saturn's gone flying, crashing into some buildings in the background. That punch really threw him. Now he's laying on his back on the ground. the town. What's going on? Did Kuma do that? So the Marine soldiers reacting. He just punched one of the five elders. He attacked one of the world's greatest overseers. Pant, pant. Kuma's panting. Go help Saint Saturn at once. He's under the rubble. For someone of his status to be struck by a slave. Pant, pant. This is unprecedented. Hey, we can move again, Bonnie-chan. Are you hurt? This is our chance. Get Bonnie to upper levels. Escaping the island is our only objective. Now Vegapunk thinking, what is the meaning of this? That's a good question. The truth is, I didn't install a traditional self-destruct mechanism. I couldn't bear the idea of making you into a bomb, knowing how those bastards would take full advantage of that. But I still kept my word. I just used a different kind of failsafe. And he activated it. I programmed it to shut down your body completely. Between that and the loss of your individuality, you should be nothing but a vegetable now, incapable of receiving orders. And while Vegapunk is thinking all of this, Kuma is leaning over and picking up a crying Bonnie and hugging her. Now he's holding Bonnie and she's crying. Even accounting for Bonnie's presence here, you shouldn't have been able to reach us. So how are you still moving? This almost seems beyond science. It can't be. What am I thinking? Can it? The Buccaneers were said to have special characteristics beyond their strong bodies. After all, people once... So he's, again, you people once speculating something about the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers were said to have a special characteristic beyond their strong bodies. After all, you people once. Now we're going to Kizaru. Going to Kizaru. It's over, isn't it? Kuma and there's Sentomaru. Still naval officers arguing, where's Straw Hat? He disappeared right before we could apprehend him. There's no way we can call in such a failure. Bonnie reaching out her hand and touching Kuma's face. Thank you, Daddy, for everything. I saw your memories. Mommy seemed like an amazing woman. And I saw how you actually wrote me lots and lots of letters that made me so happy. I don't care if everyone else calls you a tyrant, because I know there's no one kinder than my dad. Hug. To me, you're the coolest person in the whole wide world. I'll never ever forget that. Our crash. Saint Saturn? So Saint Saturn is getting up in the rubble from the rubble behind Kuma. Got the black lightning going off and the building being completely shattered as he gets up. Stomp. Ah! Vegapunk. I'm still waiting for an explanation. This was your doing. I suppose it'd be fair to say that I am ultimately responsible. But if you're a romantic, you could just as easily chalk this up to the power of love. I see. As usual, to err is human. How short-sighted. You gentlemen have outlived your youthfulness. Farewell. Slow. Okay, so Saturn lost his arm completely. He had a bloody stump, and now he is completely reforming his arm. And his horn was broken too, and he's reforming that. So it's instant regeneration of lost limbs. Sanji's reacting. What the? His body is regenerating? Get out of the way, Daddy. You've got to move. Now Saturn is aiming an attack using one of his spiked legs, right? Pointing right at Kuma's back. Sanji's dashing in. I'm not gonna let you upset Bonnie-chan anymore, you dirty old spider. And he kicks the claw out of the way so it misses Kuma. Yeah, we owe Kuma a huge debt too. Radical. And it's Frankie firing a radical beam. Kizaru looking on. My goodness, you certainly have grown a lot. Beam. Frankie fires a radical beam through Saint Saturn. Kizaru jumps up behind Frankie, preparing a kick. Let's put your growth to the test. Frankie! Sanji screams for Frankie, and Kizaru lands a kick on Frankie. So Kizaru is still fighting on the side of Saint Saturn. Maybe his heart isn't entirely into it, but he is still fighting on the side of Saint Saturn. Does this call into question the theory that he was the one who gave Luffy the food? I don't know. He's admiring and respecting the growth they've accomplished since Shabondi at the very least. But he is still fighting on the side of Saint Saturn. So we're back to the panel. He kicked Frankie, and Frankie's crashed into a building in the background. Saint Saturn is regenerating the hole in his chest from Frankie's radical beam. Vegapunk, Dad can't move. Atlas, can you carry him to our meeting point in the Labostratum? Leave it to me. Now that Kuma's joined us, wouldn't you agree there are too many players on the board? This is Kizaru speaking to Saturn. I think it's about time we wrap this up. You're a sad man, Kizaru. Have you no heart? Says Vegapunk. I should have bought a darker pair of shades. I'm going to embarrass myself at this rate. The Buster Call protocol has been authorized. By the authority of the world government, this island has been declared a threat to the entire world. All ships take aim, reduce everything to ashes in the name of justice. Well, Buster Call's been called. Now Saturn is speaking. A traitor who studied the taboo secrets of the world, a survivor of a bloodline that should be extinct, and a pirate who awakened the power of that ancient god. This island has been completely infested. The forces of justice loom. Chapter end. So this is setting up escalation to the climax. One thing that I didn't really expect was a Buster Call being called, but it does make sense. So ultimately, Egghead is going to be razed to the ground like O'Hara was. Everyone on the island will be killed. I believe that there was some evacuation taking place. I'm not sure how far off the island most of the Egghead residents got. This chapter confirms that Kizaru is still fighting for Saturn and the world government, so the idea of him completely betraying the world government and deflecting is pretty much out of the picture at this point. The question is, did Kizaru call the Buster Call? Or did Saturn order it? Because we don't see who actually pulled out the Golden Dendenmushi and made the call. I suppose it might have been Kizaru because the last thing we see before the Marines shouting that the Buster Call has been authorized is Kizaru saying that there are too many players on the board and it's about time we wrap this up. So perhaps Kizaru made the Buster Call order since both he and Saturn have the authority to call it. But did he give Luffy the food is the question. If he did give Luffy the food, then that leaves a big question mark on who could have delivered all that food to Luffy. It's interesting to see that Saturn, it seems that he has superior regenerative capabilities, not quite durability because he takes damage from the attacks. Kuma attacked him, it broke his horn and completely severed one of his arms and messed him up pretty badly. And he regenerated all of that damage and regrew those limbs and body parts that were broken off. Then we have Franky firing a radical beam through his chest. He also regenerated that damage. So regenerative capabilities are really good. Probably the best we've seen in this series so far. Does this extend to the other elders? It probably does. They all have this regenerative capability. We haven't seen him do much combat-wise. We do know he has that eye thing, that glare, where he stares at someone and knocks them down completely. He also has some power that seems to be able to make people completely paralyzed. He might need to concentrate to maintain this power because it seems that once Kuma landed that attack on Saturn, everyone that was paralyzed was released from the paralysis. And Saturn hasn't attempted to put them back under paralysis. I don't know if that's a decision. He's decided, you know what, I'm done trying to paralyze them, or if it's a concentration thing and his concentration is still completely broken, so he can't paralyze everyone. Now that a Buster Call has been ordered, they're going to open fire with all their cannons. The Marine ships. All the Marines that are currently on the island are in danger. They're going to be killed if they don't manage to get off the island in time. Any citizens of Egghead that might be left behind are going to be killed. So the question is, Straw Hat's goal is to flee, so they're probably going to try to get off the island. Continue with their plan to get off the island with Vegapunk. So the options here are either A, something has to completely repel the Buster Call, something powerful enough to take down all of the Navy warships surrounding the island, and I believe it was something like 100 or maybe more ships surrounding the island. Or a way for them to escape the island quickly. But now that Kuma's here, that presents an entirely new vector for them to escape pretty easily, actually. If they get everyone onto the ship, everyone that they need to escape the island, if they get everyone onto the Sunny, Vegapunk could use his Paw Paw power and teleport the ship instantaneously off of the island, far enough away that the Marines can't track them and the Buster Call won't affect them at all. That's one vector of escape. And it seems kind of likely here it would be Kuma sacrificing himself because he could get on the ship as well and use his power to repel it, but at this state, I'm not sure that he will. He might stay behind just to make sure that there's no way for Saturn and Kizaru to pursue. Or it might be the last thing he does with the last of his power if he is really completely deactivated and running on nothing but his love for Bonnie right now. So that is an option. The ancient robot being activated is another option that we haven't seen anything from it yet. We've been assuming that something will happen during this Egghead arc. If something doesn't happen during the Egghead arc, the awakened robot might be something that pays off later. The robot might get off the island somehow or just survive the Buster Call because it's from such an advanced technology that the Marines probably can't destroy it. Simply destroy it. The world government probably would have ordered the destruction of that robot if it was possible, especially after Vegapunk already studied it and got all the technology and information he could from it. World government would want it destroyed if it can't be brought under their control because it stands as a threat, a potential weapon that could be used against the world government. So with that in mind, that means that the Marines probably can't destroy the robot. So it's not really at risk of being destroyed. So the question is, what could the robot do? Either on Egghead or off Egghead at some point later on in the story. On Egghead, it could help them escape. It could possibly fight with Saturn and Kizaru, keeping them distracted long enough for Straw Hats to escape. Another option is it could somehow attack the Marine ships surrounding the island, canceling out the Buster Call and allowing the Straw Hats to escape by sea, possibly. That seems a little bit less likely. I suppose another option is it could pick up the ship and carry the Straw Hats off the island, assuming it has some sort of flight capabilities, which seems like it probably does. So those are all possibilities. I think the strongest possibility might be Kuma using his Pawpaw ability to send everyone away again, because this Egghead is mirroring Shabandi. So if it's mirroring Shabandi, thematically it should end the same way Shabandi did, where Kuma saved the Straw Hats by using his abilities, his Pawpaw powers, to send them all away from the danger. So that seems like it is the most likely occurrence here. But one thing that this does mean is if the Straw Hats get sent away again, saved by Kuma again, is that another sign that they still aren't ready? Since it's a repeat of Shabandi, the crew hasn't been entirely defeated, but the crew is still in over their head and had to be rescued by Kuma again. They did show that they can do damage to Saturn. But Saturn could completely regenerate that damage, and if they don't have a way to either counter the regeneration or do so much damage that he can't regenerate at all, then they're probably not going to be defeating Saturn. We don't get to see Luffy go against Saturn, which would be an interesting decision, because if we see him at the very least clash with Saturn, we can kind of get us a little bit of a sense of where Luffy stands in his Gear 5 against the Five Elders. We have things like Kuma and Frankie being able to damage Saturn, but it doesn't take a lot to damage Saturn. Even Bonnie was able to damage Saturn a little bit. So just being able to damage Saturn is a bit of a feat, but not that much. As long as you catch him off guard and he can't use whatever his powers are to paralyze or attack you, then you can get a hit in and do some damage, but he can regenerate and heal it all up is the issue. It could be that Saturn is still holding back. He doesn't really feel that threatened in his situation. That is a possibility. Because he feels that these are inferior humans all around him. So even if they do attack him, it doesn't really matter that much. That could be what the situation is, but I have a feeling it's not quite that. Then there's the Kizaru situation. Got a shot in on Frankie. Luffy at full strength can probably take on Kizaru. Sanji at full strength. Uh, he might be able to take on Kizaru. And if he can, then Zoro can. But Kizaru and Saturn at the same time might be too much for... It'll definitely be too much for Sanji and Zoro. Might be too much for Luffy. Uh, Considering the limitations of Gear 5, doesn't really have forever to fight in that mode. So it's best he finishes battles quickly in that mode if he can. But you already had him clash with Kizaru. Hasn't had a clash with Saturn. If he doesn't at this stage, then having them the Straw Hats all being rescued by Kuma is a sign that they still aren't quite ready. Which would connect to Kuma or Kizaru's statement about their growth and putting their growth to the test. Perhaps the Buster Call itself is going to be the test of their growth. So Kizaru makes this call for the Buster Call. So there's no break next week, which is good. We will get right into the situation, how they get off the island. I'm kind of at a 50-50 on this. Maybe it's not quite a 50-50. I have to think about it, but it seems like the two options are either A, to repel the Buster Call. To repel a Buster Call would be a huge feat, another unprecedented incident at Egghead. The repelling of a Buster Call. Escaping a Buster Call has been done before by, at the very least, Nico Robin. And now it's actually pretty much confirmed that Saul kind of escaped the Buster Call as well. So escaping a Buster Call has happened before. But repelling a Buster Call, completely repelling a Buster Call would be a whole nother level. That would be a feat. Do I want to call that Yonko level feat? Yes, it would be, because Yonko typically have territory and huge fleets of their huge pirate fleets that are usually strong enough to repel the Marines. So probably a Yonko, or maybe two Yonko in an alliance, could repel a Buster Call. But it's not happened before, so it still would be something to behold. So that could be an option, but I feel like that's not the pragmatic choice, because the Straw Hats' goal isn't to fight with the world government here. Their goal is to escape with Vegapunk. So with that in mind, the more likely scenario is that they somehow escape the island as the Buster Call is happening. And the most likely vectors for that would be Kuma and or the robot. Kuma being more likely, since this arc mirrors Shabondi, and the way Shabondi ended was with Kuma saving the Straw Hats. So Egghead should end in a similar fashion if it is doing the whole parallel thing where it parallels thematically Shabondi, and it seems that it does. It will end with Kuma saving the Straw Hats. thematically, that does kind of leave a question mark there on if the Straw Hats are ready. If the Straw Hats were truly ready, then they probably would have been able to just repel the Buster Call and attack Saturn, Kizaru, take them down, and just waltz off the island with Vegapunk in tow. So them having to be saved by Kuma again is kind of another signal that they still aren't quite where they need to be in terms of facing off against the world government, which I suppose fits. I suppose it does fit. It makes sense thematically that they're not quite ready, since now the world government is starting to reveal their ultimate powers slowly yet surely. So, but the question is, if they aren't quite ready to take on the world government yet, then what kind of growth would they need to go through to reach the point where they're ready? It took a 2-year time skip to get them ready for the new world. I don't think another time skip will be necessary for them to reach the end game level, but it's possible, but I believe it's doubtful. I believe the Straw Hats, at their current state, are just about ready for the end game. Any growth that they need to do will be growth that they can do throughout the upcoming arcs. Minor growth, they won't need the major growth of a time skip to reach the point where they're ready to fight the world government. At least that's what I'm currently thinking. Though, if we take this and extend it out into the larger world and put things a bit more in perspective, during this arc, we did have Law and Kid both get defeated by Yonko. But the problem with that is that Law and Kid are both significantly weaker than Luffy. So there is a question mark there. But if this is establishing that Law and Kid aren't ready, is this establishing that Law and Kid aren't ready because they're just not as good as Luffy? Or is this going to be establishing that Law, Kid, and Luffy aren't ready and all of them will need growth? And that growth will be to come in the future as the chapters go on. But because there's such a power gap between Law and Kid and Luffy, I feel like their defeat doesn't really matter that much to Luffy in terms of whether he'll be defeated or not. So, because the goal was escaping from Egghead with Vegapunk. If the Straw Hats manage that, then it's not really a defeat. While Law and Kid got decidedly defeated by Blackbeard and Shanks. And there is the element that Law and Kid were going up against endgame characters, basically. So, kind of makes sense that they would get taken out like that. While Luffy is going up against Kizaru and Saturn, which are not really endgame characters. Like, maybe the argument could be made that Saturn will be endgame together with all the other elders. Like, the elders and Eam together will be an endgame force. But even with that argument, that means that Saturn by himself is not endgame class. He has to be with the others to be truly the endgame class threat. Saturn by himself is just a little bit of a taste. So, with that in mind, Luffy was not really against endgame characters, while Law and Kid were definitely against endgame characters. Blackbeard, definitely endgame. Shanks, definitely endgame or just before endgame, like pre-endgame character. And if Shanks is only pre-endgame, that makes Kid's defeat even more pathetic than it was already. But that's kind of par for the course for Kid. But yeah, that was a good chapter. Setting things up nicely. We're rising towards the climax of the arc. We've got some questions on how they're going to escape now that things have reached a critical mass with the Buster Call being called on the island. Egghead is definitely going to be destroyed and wiped from the history books. Everything that happened to Ohara will happen to Egghead. The difference, well, actually not so much of a difference, being that there will be survivors. One survivor is critical, being Vegapunk himself, who has the knowledge of Ohara. So the knowledge of Ohara will live on. Maybe post Egghead after this arc is over, Vegapunk might get to talk to Robin and they can converse a bit about Ohara and we can learn a little bit more about the knowledge that Ohara had. Vegapunk was mentioning something about the Buccaneer race that he didn't get to finish. So there's still some mysteries about the Buccaneers. They're not just big. They don't just have big and powerful bodies that are half giants. There's something else about their race that's special. Now the question is this special thing about the Buccaneer race due to them being part giant? Which means that that special thing about the Buccaneer race is also something special about the giant race? Which would link to Elbaf, which is going to be a pretty important arc. It's going to be a very important arc. Elbaf, probably one of the most important arcs in One Piece, considering how early on it was introduced and how long it has taken for Straw Hats to finally get to Elbaf. So Elbaf is going to be a massive arc. The implication that there's something special about the Buccaneers, does that also imply that there's something special about the Giants? If it doesn't, then what is the other half of the Buccaneer genetics? They're half human, half giant, I believe. At least that's what we've been led to believe so far. So is the special thing about their Buccaneer race inherent to them through their genetics? Or is it more something about their will, their belief system? Because the Buccaneers are also connected to the sun god Nika. Could the Buccaneers be the race that lived in the kingdom of the Lost Kingdom? If they are from the Lost Kingdom, are the Buccaneers then related to the D clan? Because previously we've been thinking that it is perhaps the D clan that inherited, that were the original inhabitants of the Lost Kingdom. And the D clan are descendants of that Lost Kingdom. So could the It could be that more than one race lived in the Lost Kingdom. But is that really enough? I don't think so. Because Vegapunk's words speaking about some inherent trait in the Buccaneers. Their large bodies, their physical stature, and their power, that is inherent in them genetically from being half giant. It's not just that, there's something else. You people, question mark. And if it's something inherent to them, could it also be inherent to the giants? The most powerful race on the planet. There is a difference there because the giants don't believe, I mean, perhaps they believe in Nika as a god, but they don't worship Nika. They worship Elbath, their warrior god. Which brings up the question, was Elbath a person like Nika was? Could there be a relationship between Elbath and Nika? Because now, in the One Piece community, they start, with the existence of Nika being confirmed, they start to question whether the other gods mentioned in the story exist, specifically the ones mentioned in Skypiea, alongside the sun god. But what if Elbath is actually in that mix as well, and Elbath was a person like Nika? Interesting. Huh. That's a whole nother line of thinking that could lead to some nice theories about the world and what Joy Boy / Nika did and accomplished, and who exactly helped Nika originally. So, putting that on the back burner for a moment, let's wrap things up here. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and comment and subscribe, and I will catch you all in the next chapter. Take care.